Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our press briefing on the coronavirus today. I'm Donna Bush. Welcome to our CIGTV viewers, as well as those joining us on Radio Cayman and on our social media platforms. We go first to our prayer for today from the Assistant Pastor, Bentley Robinson.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Pastor Bentley Robinson, Assistant Pastor at First Baptist Church. Let's ask you to pray with me, please. Father in heaven, we are so thankful for your goodness to us. Lord, we thank you for your grace and mercy towards us, Lord. Father, in a special way, I want to pray and thank you for our government, the opposition, Lord, and the work that they have been doing, Lord, for the betterment and the safety of our islands and the people. We pray for your continued guidance and wisdom for them, Father. We thank you for our medical team, for the police, and all other persons who are on the front line at this time, working tirelessly. We pray for their protection. We pray for the protection of their families. Father, we pray for persons, Lord, across these islands right now, that they would take seriously the plans that have been put in place, Lord, that would help to stem the spread of this virus. So, Father, we commit all of this to you, and we tell you thanks again for all that you have been doing. Bless this press briefing today, we pray, in Jesus' name. Amen.
And thank you, Assistant Pastor Robinson. We now welcome our panelists, His Excellency the Governor, the Honourable Premier, and the Honourable Minister of Health. We also have in the room with us Dr. John Lee, the Chief Medical Officer, as well as Commissioner Byrne, and HMCI Director, Ms. Danielle Coleman. We go first to our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. John Lee.
Good afternoon. I've got 76 samples to report today, which relate to samples taken on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. There are 5 positive, of whom 4 are locally acquired, and 1 was a contact of a previously known sufferer. 71 were negative. That brings the totals to 778 tested, 66 positive, and 711 negative. The breakdown of the people who are positive are that 29 have some symptoms, 19 are asymptomatic, and 5 remain inpatients, although I'm pleased to say that the person that had the breathing tube was intubated at Health City has now no longer requires that. 5 remain clinically recovered, including 1 on Cayman Brac, 7 recovered fully, and there, as we know, 1 death from Health City. I wanted to let you know that from this week going forward, we plan to provide the results daily at the press briefing, giving you the totals of positives and any details that are relevant, as well as the negatives. However, the reports for individual persons will be distributed to their healthcare providers as they would normally do with other results as these. This is to facilitate patient care, number 1, and also because we are beginning to increase the numbers we're testing, the volume of tests that we are facing, it's growing and growing. It becomes very difficult to contact people in a short window just before the press conference. So we'll just be releasing those in the usual fashion through the usual channels. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. We'd also like to welcome our sign language interpreter as well as members of the press via Zoom. We have Ralph Lewis from the Caymanian Times. Ralph, do you have any questions for Dr. Lee?
Yes, I do. Good afternoon, Dr. Lee. I'm trying to get my head around the testing procedure. Can you decide what's the testing process from the time you decide to test someone up until the time the results are given?
Yes, so the time to test up to now has been at the time that somebody presents to a healthcare professional, and that professional will make a decision to do so. They're often taken to a different place to be tested because the person that is doing the test will be wearing personal protective equipment. The person will have a nasopharyngeal swab done. This is a long, sort of like a long Q-tip type thing that's passed into the nose, to the back of the nose for a moment and then taken out, and then the sample goes to the laboratory. Clearly, there's a lot of registration involved. You need to register before you go into have the test done, and that generates the labels that are attached to your sample and the labels for the sample bag. Once the test arrives at the laboratory, it goes through, at the Health Services Authority, it goes through a process of deactivation, which involves going into a biosafety cabinet in order that the viral material is no longer infectious, so that happens in the biosafety cabinet. And that is the first stage of the preparation. The next stage of the preparation of the sample, that it has what we call an extraction process, where the viral information, the material is extracted. If you want more details, you're probably going to have to get one of the laboratory people to come. The last stage is actually the polymerase chain reaction. You just wanted me to get that word wrong again, I know. But so it's the PCR machine, which people often think is the most complex part in it, and it is a very clever machine, but you need to have all the parts beforehand to be working in the right way. Those results are generated to an Excel spreadsheet. That Excel spreadsheet then goes back to the hospital information system, whether it's manually or electronically, and gets fed into the results for the individual patient. At the moment, what's happening is the Excel spreadsheet is generating lists of patient names, and Public Health are calling that patient just before the press conference. But what we now wish to do is to send that information directly at the Health Services Authority. It'll be into their computer, and similarly at other places, it'll be into the computer, and then the clinician would then be alerted there's a new result, and they'll let the patient know or the subject know in the usual way.
Okay. Thank you. That was very helpful. And one more question, Doc. Do we have all the requirements or the resources for each stage?
Yeah, we're still struggling. Swabs, we think, are going to be resolved this week. There's a big order that's hopefully coming in of 40,000 swabs, which is actually a part order of an even larger order of 150,000. So we're hoping that's going to come in this week and resolve the swab problem. As you know, we've got enough reagents for the PCR machine. That was the bulk amount that we bought. We're still struggling with the extraction kits. This is part of the process. We have a number of lines of inquiry. We have a number of aliquots, amounts of these that are definitely coming. There's no question they're coming, but the question is in how quickly are they coming. You've heard around the world that people are struggling with all of the different parts of the process, and we're no different to that. It's the extraction kits that we've solved the other bits of it. We're now working on this bit.
Okay. And the reason for me asking is that, of course, we understand that bulk testing or a ramped up schedule of testing is key to how we move forward in the future. That's why I wanted to get an example, an idea of how it's done. But that's it for me.
Yeah, we currently have the capacity. I haven't looked at the latest, but for around 3,000 extractions. So we currently have quite a bit of capacity on island for that. We're not close to running out on that score. And a lot of the orders that we have coming in should be in within a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then we've been promised them at weekly intervals thereafter. But we're just trying to get a bit more confidence about that and get, we'd like to have, a few tens of thousands of the abilities to do these under our belt. That would be a good place to be.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ralph. Now we're going to move on to Wendy at CNS. Wendy, please go ahead.
Donna. Thanks, Donna. Sorry, I was expecting open. Dr. Lee, the Doctors' Hospital, they've set up a tent. They've been sending out press releases. They're talking about being able to do 650 tests a day, and that this is all imminent. I was just wondering whether you could say, have they been given the green light now to test after you said on Friday that the PAHO had approved their protocols? So if you could say whether they've been given the green light, and if so, how it fits in with the overall policy. Who will they be testing and how will they be testing under the HSA umbrella?
Yep, so I'll answer the second part first, if I may. So the testing system protocol approach that we're using is an island-wide one, where everybody is contributing to the ability to test. The groups of who will be tested have been agreed by a multi-professional group of people. So it's very much an integrated approach that we're using, and Doctors Hospital have been assisting and helping us draw that up at every stage. As far as the actual testing is concerned, I know they're raring to go. The Ministry of Health sent Doctors Hospital a document to consider, which is a document that we've asked them to agree to, and they kept it for a while. They sent it back to us, and now it's with our legal team. These legal things always don't happen in an instant. People need to make sure that everything is correct before they get signed. That's what's happening at the moment.
So their comment that they were hoping it was all going to be resolved today is not realistic.
I think that's unlikely. Just as they needed more than a day to cogitate over these things, we also need to do so. Part of the details of exactly the process that we use, I'm hoping to put into that document, that we would adhere to international guidelines around the testing process. And I've been taking further advice about how exactly that might be worded to put into the process, which is, I think, an important part to make sure that we're working from a common set of standards. It doesn't need to be the same standard, but a common set of standards.
Okay. Also, can I ask you, the 4 people that tested positive that you believe are local transmissions, how come they got tested? Is it because they presented to the hospital?
I'm just trying to work out. I think 2 of them were contacts of someone, but a distant contact, but warranted testing. I'm not as close to that, the details of that, Wendy, but I think 2 of them were close to a contact which generated their testing, and 2 of them were presentations at the hospital.
Okay, so, one of the things that quite a lot of people are beginning to raise is they're trying to get an understanding of the type of testing that we're doing, because we know we're sticking to the PAHO criteria still, are we not? At the moment, we are. Yes.
I have to say,
we're
we've loosened it. We have loosened it since we agreed that we were going to move away from it. A lot of people have actually been loosening it. So we've actually, as I mentioned on Friday, I said we'd already started screening. We are already screening. There's a lot of screening tests that have happened. Well, they happened on Friday. They're continuing to happen today. And they're going to go on happening now for the foreseeable future. And alongside that, knowing that the protocol is going to be relaxed, and me having said that there would be a soft launch, we have been doing exactly what I've said we'd be doing.
Okay, is it possible at the next briefing to get a rough breakdown of how many of the of all of the testing? Like, so we're around about the 800, coming up to the 800 mark. So, like, an idea of how much of that testing has been of people that travelled, or just random members of it. So there's the travel, the direct contacts, and then the random members of the community, because that's where we'll probably get a much better picture of the actual community spread from that 3rd block, if you see what I mean. Is it possible to get those broken down that way for the next briefing?
It might be possible. I would need to check. I think actually if I may suggest, what's going to be far more interesting to me is the fact that when we start to do the screening, we're essentially looking at who we hope are healthy people. And that is going to give us a much better picture of what's happening in the island, because we're going to be calling forward all these people who don't think they have it. And that is going to be really valuable information. So we are making sure that we identify all of the screening people as a different group. And I definitely feel, that information is stuff that you'd want to know and I'd want to share with you.
Yeah.
Because that is really key.
Yeah, because I think that's when you say the screening people, that you're talking about the frontline workers, or you're just talking about
Exactly.
random? Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah.
So people who don't have
get you.
symptoms, yeah. So we're just, exactly, people who haven't gone to their doctor, we've said, please come in and have a test. Because those
Right.
people clearly come from right across the island. They could live anywhere.
And when will that start happening?
That started already. So, but now we have a
Right.
column, we have a flag in the spreadsheet to say screen. And so we'll be able to
great.
filter by the screen and then, report that back to you.
Fantastic.
Okay.
That's my questions answered. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. And now we move to April from Radio Cayman.
Good afternoon, Dr. Lee. This question is from a listener. They asked whether people who have recovered from COVID-19 and tested negative, whether they're allowed to give blood, and if so, why or why not?
I think that answer was already, that question was already answered by the Minister of Health around 2 weeks ago, that there's been no evidence that respiratory infections can be transmitted by blood donations. However, the blood bank is naturally exceedingly cautious, and I don't know what their policy is on this. I wouldn't be at all surprised if they said, until we have further information, we're going to deny deny taking donations, but I don't actually know. I don't know the answer to your question, the formal answer.
Thanks, Dr. Lee. We'll check with them.
Okay, now we're going to go to Kayla at the Cayman Compass.
Hi, Dr. Lee.
Afternoon.
Kind of tag teaming off of April's question about blood. We've seen in other jurisdictions that they're experimenting with plasma therapy from patients who have recovered from COVID-19. Is that something that you looked into or that Cayman would consider?
It's not really an experimental therapy in general. It's something that's been used for a long, long while in different conditions. And certainly it's on the list of things that are possibilities for use here in Cayman. You'll remember that we've reported that a multi-professional group have developed a clinical protocol around the management of patients. And clearly, you'd be thinking of things like that for the very sickest people who you're thinking, what next? Because I really need to find something to help. But it's on the list of things we might consider trying on a patient-by-patient basis. Yes. And I can tell you, some people have actually already also volunteered to have their plasma drawn for this purpose. So that's good news.
Wonderful. I believe that we're also 2 weeks out from the arrival of the British Airways flight that came in. Would we be seeing testing of the arrivals from that flight happening soon?
I thought, sorry, I'm looking to Danny Coleman over there. I thought, because she may remember the details, I thought that group had already been released, the students?
Less than 2 weeks.
Oh, this is the next flight. Yes, so if it's 2 weeks, they'll get tested. I didn't think we were quite there yet.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
there's a lot of
I don't
groups
know the
to
dates,
keep
but
up
yes,
with.
they would get tested 2 weeks after they arrived, yes.
Okay, great. We also got a message about the comment earlier about the patient who was intubated. He or she, whatever their gender may be, they're a HSA patient, correct, rather than Health City, as I believe was stated earlier?
Yes, sorry, HSA patient, yes.
Okay, perfect. And I just had one other question for you that's been coming up about contact tracing. And is there any concern that members of the public might lie or fib about who they've been in contact with if they're in fear that they have violated public health regulations? That individuals might hesitate to say, well, yes, I was at a party Friday night and these were the 20 people who were there.
Yeah, I think that's always a possibility. That's the nature of public health contact tracing. A lot of this contact tracing arrived in an era where we were trying to trace people with sexually transmitted diseases. So it was an incredibly sensitive area of discussion. And that is their job, essentially. it's a question of trying to make sure that people understand it's for the good of the public and that it's not a punitive process. We just want to try and make sure that we protect the public of the greatest number of people we possibly can. And in doing that, many people will discuss things they might not wish to discuss in other circumstances.
Would there be any sort of protection offered for people if, you know, they are forthcoming in favor of public health?
That would all be dealt with on an individual case-by-case basis. But just, you know, this becomes a health matter, and healthcare professionals normally are good at treading those difficult lines and getting to the right end result, that where we are getting the best possible result with the smallest possible harm.
Thank you, Dr. Lee.
Thank you, Kayla, and thank you very much, Dr. Lee. We're now going to call on Commissioner of Police, Mr. Derek Byrne, for his update.
Good afternoon. The past weekend was relatively quiet across the islands. A small number of serious crime incidents did occur. That said, the crime situation remains very stable. I mentioned last week that we had 2 burglaries in commercial premises in Georgetown. One male has since been arrested and charged with both crimes. He appeared before the court this morning and is now remanded in custody to HMP Northwood. Separately, we had 2 burglaries reported over the weekend, one at a play school on Walker's Road in Georgetown, ICT equipment stolen. We also had a burglary at an auto electronics store in Saturn Close in Georgetown, and a small amount of auto electronics stolen. I encourage business owners to check their premises and contact RCIPS. We will be available to assist. Overnight, Little Cayman, no issues arising. Cayman Brack, 6 vehicles stopped, 4 persons in 2 vehicles found in breach of curfew and warrant for prosecution. Grand Cayman, 275 vehicles stopped. Across Grand Cayman, 2 persons were warned for prosecution found in breach of curfew. Over the weekend, 2 particular crimes of note, just summary details. On Friday night last at 9 p.m. in West Bay, our COVID-19 proactive patrols came across a group of males playing dominoes in breach of curfew and social distancing protocols. The officers went about investigating the breaches. One of the males left the scene and was followed by one of the officers. The male threatened the officer with a machete and became very aggressive. A firearms response unit was requested and responded. The male continued to threaten the officers and was tasered and subdued. He was arrested and conveyed to our custody detention centre. He appeared before the court this morning charged with a number of criminal offences and was remanded in custody to HMP Northwood. The Ombudsman was notified of the incident, and it has been agreed that the police will conduct an internal investigation referred to as a post-incident management report, a copy of which will be sent to the Ombudsman. In a second incident on Saturday afternoon last, the RCIPS conducted an intelligence-led operation in the Georgetown area to deal with illegal cockfighting. The operation involved frontline uniform officers, armed support personnel, and the police helicopter. With the arrival of the police, a large number of persons ran from the scene. 2 persons were arrested at the scene, and the others were found running in various different locations and directions. All will be prosecuted for breach of curfew, and the 2 arrested persons are being investigated for a range of criminal offences. Of particular note, at the scene, the police found 24 roosters. Some were in very poor shape with severe injuries. The Department of Agriculture was contacted, and 2 animal welfare officers arrived on the scene. 17 of the roosters were so badly injured it was necessary to euthanize them at the scene. The remainder of the roosters were taken by the animal welfare officers to their facility for treatment. At the scene, a large amount of cockfighting paraphernalia was found, including steel, metal spiked spurs, various steroid applications. In all, 9 males and 1 female were found to be involved, and they range in age from 17 to 48. At this stage of the investigation, we cannot say if the roosters were bred here or imported. The investigation is ongoing, and a file will be submitted to the DPP for legal ruling as it relates to the cockfighting and animal cruelty. This morning, since 6 a.m., 13 persons were found in breach of soft curfew or shelter-in-place regulations. 4 tickets were issued, 8 persons were warned for prosecution. 1 person became aggressive when stopped and was arrested for disorderly behaviour, for which he will be prosecuted. He was also warned for prosecution for breach of curfew. This morning, our supermarkets, pharmacies, banks and gas stations are operating well and without incident. Operations are being well managed and well controlled. Social distancing protocols are being followed. No detected breaches of hard curfew across the beaches occurred this morning. Our helicopter and marine units remain deployed on extended tours, monitoring marine activities and ground activities. A reminder that we return to hard curfew at 7 p.m. this evening until 5 a.m. in the morning. Access to public beaches remains in full 24-hour hard lockdown until Friday, the 1st of May at 5 a.m. Exercise periods are permitted daily for 90 minutes between 5:15 a.m. and 6:45 p.m. If you're not an exempted person as essential services, you should not be out and about during the period of hard curfew, so please stay at home. Police mobile and static patrols remain in place across the islands to enforce the curfew and shelter-in-place regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a question from Wendy for you. Just 1 second for me, Wendy. We also have Dr. Samuel Williams Rodriguez on Zoom. If anyone has any questions for Dr. Sam, you can ask him as well. So here we go. Wendy, go ahead.
Thanks, Donna. Commissioner, can I just ask you, do you have a rough idea how many people were actually at that gathering with the cockfighting? So roughly before, I mean, I know in total probably around a dozen people have been arrested, or have been said to have been involved in the actual crime. But can you give us an idea of the size of the crowd?
Yeah, the helicopter would tell us there were in the region of 20 persons before the units were dispatched. When we got there, 10 persons were detected, 2 arrested, and 8 dealt with by way of ticket.
Okay, great. The other issue is the ticketing. We have had quite a lot of concern from readers that officers are still mixing up the rules. So, for example, people are getting ticketed on their correct day because they said they're going to a gas station, or for exercising on what the police officers insist is their wrong day, when you have said maybe a dozen times now that exercising. So there are actually people now getting tickets for crimes that they have not committed, but yet officers are insisting that they've committed these crimes. So how do they address those incorrectly given tickets?
Okay, so anybody that has a complaint can write to pr@rcips.ky. We do have a quality assurance office, which is our process office, and I've directed that all files will pass through that office to be examined to ensure that the charges are in fact correct before they go to the Director of Public Prosecutions. So we are monitoring difficulties as encountered, the ones you're describing there.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Now we go to Kayla from the Compass.
Hi, Commissioner. I wanted to see if we could get an update on the domestic violence situation on island, if we have in fact seen a spike, and if so, how many cases reports are we getting?
No, so absolutely no spike. We monitor it on a daily basis. The MASH unit remains up and running with the inspector in charge, Inspector Ashford. We're looking at it on a daily basis. Internationally, we do see spikes, or we hear of spikes, but definitely no spike occurring here. Very few instances of domestic violence reported to us out of the ordinary.
Why do you think Cayman might vary from the international trends that we're seeing?
I really don't know. In terms of our risk mitigation plans, much earlier on, going back 3 or 4 weeks, we did think it would be an issue, and we've been addressing it on a daily basis since to watch and see, has there been any spike? We've been in touch with the crisis centre. Absolutely no spike, and we did think it might be an issue, but it hasn't turned out that way at the moment.
Okay. I also wanted to ask about the ticketing and the police stops, if we have seen any complaints filed from community members about their interactions.
No complaints about the officers. Some stuff I picked up about officers not observing social distancing and the protocols at the scene. We addressed that much earlier on, and then as Wendy has previously highlighted, people feel they've been unfairly ticketed. So on that basis then we have set up the office It's a quality assurance office for all files going to the Director for Legal Ruling to make sure that we examine them and we apply the principles of fairness and natural justice before they go.
Okay, thank you. That's all for me.
Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Commissioner. We now go to our Honourable Premier, Mr. Alden McLaughlin.
Thank you, Donna. Hello, everyone. It's not that I'm actually foregoing the Grim Reaper report today. It's just we've decided on another format. At the end of the press conference, the league table will be posted so everyone who is interested in that can actually see it. Also, I can just say I hope as early as tomorrow, we'll be able to put up the dashboard with respect to the results, the local results as well, so that everyone can see those, because we get many questions asking for information relating to both of these. But it does take quite a while for me to go through that every day. And increasingly, we have more and more things we need to announce to the public and explain. So that'll be up at the end of this press conference. I think the first announcement I want to make, which some may have known of already, is that the Minister for Commerce, the Honourable Joey Hew, announced this morning that last week Cabinet approved the Trade and Business Licensing Temporary Reduction in Fees, Regulations 2020. As a result, trade and business licensing application fees for businesses will be waived from the 1st of May to the 31st of July this year. In addition, late fees from the 1st of March to 31st of July will also be waived for all applicants. Further information on the Trade and Business Licensing Temporary Reduction in Fees Regulations 2020 can be found at www.gov.ky/coronavirus. Members of the public can also visit the Department of Commerce and Investment website, www.dci.gov.ky, for trade and business licensing information. So the government caucus met for a lengthy meeting yesterday to discuss a whole range of issues. And it is proposed that Cabinet will meet tomorrow in advance of the meeting of the House scheduled for Wednesday and Thursday of this week. We know that people are keenly interested in a number of the bills that will be brought. One on which we've had many questions is about the inability of many people now to get their vehicles licensed because the period for the inspection to take place has occurred, and they are not able to have that inspection done. So one of the bills, the Traffic Amendment Bill 2020, will provide that in a time where there's been an earthquake or immediate threat of a hurricane, essentially any natural disaster, or the outbreak of pestilence or infectious disease, Cabinet will be able to, by an order published in the Gazette, grant extensions for the various periods for compliance with or exemption from any provision of the traffic law or the regulations, and will also give the director the power to issue temporary certificates relating to extension or exemption. So that will give Cabinet the ability, once the bill is passed and comes into effect, to be able to exempt for a given period vehicles or from needing to be inspected, so that they can go ahead and have them, the registrations renewed. So that is one. And one I know that is even more eagerly awaited is the issue of a pension contribution payment holiday and the ability for certain workers to withdraw funds from their pension accounts. So I think I've previously indicated that the 6-month holiday would be for 6 months, and it would take effect retroactively from the 1st of April. So Cabinet will consider and approve that bill tomorrow. The other piece of that, which people are also keenly interested in, and which we had long discussion and debate with both the pension providers as well as among ourselves in the caucus. And I also had the opportunity to speak with the Honourable Leader of the Opposition and also with Mr. Ezra Miller regarding what the government is proposing. So what we've settled on and what we expect Cabinet will approve tomorrow is that for everyone who still has an active account, i.e., those persons that are still paying contributions into their account, not pensioners themselves, people who are actually withdrawing from their account because they are now retired, not those, that eligible persons will be allowed to withdraw a single lump sum up to 100% of the commuted value or member's balance where the account value does not exceed $10,000. So in other words, if your account has 5,000 or 6,000 or 7,000 or 9,000 in it, you'll be able to take all of it. And so every person who has an account will be allowed to take up to the $10,000, assuming you have it in the account. We're not proposing to put money in it for you. And up to 25% of the remaining commuted value or member's balance, which exceeds $10,000. So as an example, if your account has $100,000 in it, you get the first $10,000, and then you get 25% of $90,000. So you'll wind up with, if my arithmetic is not too bad, $32,000 available to you. So on the one hand, I know there will be those, including the pension providers, who think that that is too much. And on the other hand, I know there'll be those who think it's not enough. We think it is striking the right balance at this point. None of us know how long this crisis is going to last. And the thing with money is it tends to burn your hand. And when you have it, you tend to spend it. So if we agree on 25%, it leaves 75% of the accounts intact, available, we hope. If we hope not, it is necessary to look at this again sometime down the road. The one thing that must be borne in mind, and I believe a lot of us are going to have a real shock when we see what the accounts look like because of the crash in the global financial markets. A lot of those values are going to be significantly less than the last statement that anyone got. So, I mean, that's not something to look forward to, but it is something to be prepared for. We have a number of other amendments that are being proposed, but those are the two I think that most people are keen on. There is one proposed with respect to the labor law, but we haven't actually got that draft completed, and I don't want to speculate about that at this stage, but I think, again, that is one that everyone will look forward to. I just want to comment briefly on where we are in terms of this crisis and the medical crisis, the public health crisis. We now have 66 positive cases. We still have no deaths. Well, there's the one unfortunate gentleman who actually came here with it. But in terms of locally transmitted or deaths of local persons, we have none, which I think is is incredible, quite frankly, given the length of time that we have been grappling with this. It is now more than a month since we closed our borders. It's now more than a month since we started the curfews. So there is no question now that these transmissions are local transmissions, community transmissions. We are not yet in the phase of sustained community transmission, but we are most definitely in community transmissions. That, despite all of our best efforts to get through the messages about social distancing, keeping people apart. And we don't know how long this is going to continue. On Friday, I read an article about Hokkaido, the Japanese island, and how they almost succeeded and then relaxed their protocols, their social distancing protocols, and have seen a huge bounce back in the virus. Many people would have seen, I think, some of the news about Singapore, which is experiencing the same thing now. I think they had 728 new cases yesterday. That's what happens when the social distancing protocols are relaxed too soon. I know many people are still, very upset about restrictions being placed on their movement and their ability to enjoy life and the beach and all of those. We have been on the receiving end, the governor, myself, and the commissioner, of some, quite frankly, very, very rude letters, to put it mildly, about interference with people's civil rights and ability to move about and enjoy the island. And there are some who suggest that, so what if a few hundred people die? They were going to die anyway. So we find that, I think, collectively quite appalling, and for me, I just can't understand how people can think that way. But I guess we're all made up differently. Some people are far more narcissistic and selfish than others. But the reality is that we cannot relax these protocols which are currently in place until we have a better understanding and appreciation of where the virus is in the community and how prevalent it actually is. A significant percentage of people are asymptomatic, and those are the ones that are most dangerous in terms of spreading it, because they may not themselves even realize that they are ill, but they give it to you, and you get very ill, or in the worst case scenario, you die as a result of it. So the testing is absolutely critical to whatever we do going forward in terms of relaxing the protocols, in terms of trying to restart the economy. And I'm so grateful that we are now at a point where that work is actually starting. A tremendous amount of work has been done by Dr. Lee and his team on what the testing protocol and program is going to look like. And once we've got that in place and the testing numbers are actually ramped up significantly, we'll be able to start to make some decisions about where we can relax some of these provisions. I think the social distancing, one about our physical distancing, staying away from other people, is going to be around for a long, long time, based on what we're seeing happening anywhere else in the world. But it will be possible, we believe, to be able to open up various aspects of the economy and various industries, as long as there are certain protocols that continue to be observed with how people behave around each other, and necessary measures being followed to ensure that we minimize the risk of transmission of the virus. I just want to say to to many people who seem to think that we should just let this go and let, it's essentially, I suppose, the belief in the Darwinian, principle that, survival of the fittest. But I'm afraid that that's not something that we believe as a government, and I know the governor doesn't believe that either, that we should adopt. Every life is important to us. It doesn't matter if it is an 85-year-old grandmother or a 45 or 51-year-old. Their life has value, their life, and they are loved by somebody or somebodies or the other. And that is our approach. We are not going to let the economic considerations override just good sense. But even if you are selfish and narcissistic, I want you to think on this. Dead people don't make good clients or customers unless you're a funeral director or a florist. And even them will tell you that dead people don't provide much repeat business. So we really can't get the economy moving again until people feel relatively safe that they can go out and do commerce, go out and have a meal without worrying that they may have contracted the virus while they were on that particular mission. So the testing will give us the ability to be able to know where it is and then to test, trace, isolate. Test, trace, isolate. That's the only way we are going to be able to control this in the medium to long term.
Thank you, Premier McLaughlin. Your Excellency.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I just want to comment on what the Premier has just said. I fully support the current strategy, and I think this Premier, again, I've said it before, is doing an absolutely excellent job in responding to this crisis, supported by the Health Minister and Cabinet Ministers. And I absolutely agree that we will not take any risks with the health or well-being of anybody on these islands, and that has to be uppermost in our minds. I'm really pleased to see the progress we're making on testing, and this is going to be an absolutely crucial part of our response in the next week or so. I just want to make a couple of announcements. First of all, on evacuation flights, Airbridge to the UK. So, first of all, the Canada flight departed today, and everything went well for that. So that's good news. We will be organising the second of our British Airways Airbridge flights on Tuesday, the 28th of April, arriving here in Grand Cayman, leaving to London via the Turks and Caicos on Wednesday, the 29th of April. We will be putting out tomorrow details of how people can book flights on book tickets on that flight. We will have a new system for this one, which will be an online booking system, which I hope will make it easier than the first one. So we'll put something out on that. We are hopeful we may be able to include pets on that flight as well. And again, we'll put some more information out on that. I also want to highlight that that flight, that Airbridge, will bring in the extraction kits that John Lee referred to earlier. We are very hopeful we will have a delivery of extraction kits on that flight. I'm also pleased to confirm today as well that we will be receiving a UK military team on that flight of 12 people, 9 of them in the armed forces, 3 will be civilians, and they will be coming out to assist us on security, assist us on planning and logistics in connection with the COVID-19 crisis, and also assisting us as we get ready for hurricane season later this year. And our security situation at the moment is stable, and I have no major concerns, but this is a welcome precautionary move so that we have some people from the UK here to assist us on security. I think it's also a strong political signal of support from the UK to Cayman and the other overseas territories. I also want to secondly pick up a question that April Cummings from Radio Cayman asked last week about civil service staff and how many people are essential workers. So I do have some figures. First of all, just to say that the civil service remains highly active in our efforts to deliver essential services during this crisis. There are a large number of teams who form part of essential services, so hazard management, Department of Public Safety, Communications, doing the 911 calls, Department of Environmental Health, waste collection, public health oversight. We have all our legal representatives in the courts, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, Attorney General's Chambers, Needs Assessment Unit, Department of Children and Family Services, and Community Rehabilitation Unit, teams in the Cabinet Office, ministries and portfolios, and the people supporting the legislative branch. We have our uniformed officers in the Fire Department and Prison Service. We have teams in the Government Information Services and Radio Cayman. And we have people in public works who are also responding to essential infrastructure needs. There is then central support teams, for example, Computer Services, Treasury Department, and the portfolio of the Civil Service. So that then means that we have about 1,274 civil servants, representing 31% of the civil service who have received curfew exemptions. The other 2/3 of the civil service, the large bulk of those people, are all working from home. So they continue to perform their functions, but they are working from home. I would also add that we have, of course, redeployed large numbers of people from the wider civil service onto some of the essential tasks that I mentioned, whether they're manning hotlines or isolation facilities. So that excludes our police. There are 500 uniformed officers in police, customs and border control and Coast Guard who are also working hard to secure our borders. And of course, we have 400 teachers who are supporting our students at home working online. And so I just want to say again that I believe our civil service has really stepped up to support us in this crisis. Led by our excellent Deputy Governor, I believe we can be proud of our civil service, and it really is, in many areas, a world-class civil service in action. So thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Minister of Health.
Thank you, Donna. Good afternoon, everyone in Grand Cayman, Cayman Brac, and Little Cayman. Happy Monday to everyone. Today is a day you got your wish, most of you anyway. Didn't have to go to work. Researchers have actually found that Monday mornings are so depressing that on average you don't crack a smile until 11:16 a.m. Only producing about 4 hours of work in that day. Let's make this one of our personal post-corona changes in our lives. Just saying. My fellow Caymanians, when this is over, and it will be over at some point, I want to be able to say proudly that with the help of you, we stopped or slowed the COVID-19 in the Cayman Islands, and we did it together. As a government, we were decisive and we acted quickly and made some hard decisions. Very few have done what we've done so far, and this is a disease that comes in waves. So we still have to be cautious going forward. Social distances may be something we have to take forward, and maybe even masks when we are slowly opening back up. This is a fluid situation. We have to keep paying attention to what is happening internationally, learn from it, and reinforce whatever we can here, or source whatever supplies or equipment is needed to bring our home back to some kind of norm. I know some are frustrated about the lockdown of beaches and the ability to swim. Well, you're doing good, so let's just be a little patient until next week. The next 2 week span ends next week. So hopefully the Premier, as he alluded to earlier, is very conscious that a lot of people want to see some kind of normalcy. And some of you may wonder about my 3 W's purpose, or what we do, why we do, and when we do. It is important that we understand that all the efforts we make won't matter if you're not inspired. That's the reason why I read the scriptures and other elements of inspiration for who wants to be inspired in this way, as some get their inspiration in different ways. The essence of time. Everyone always said, I don't have the time to do it, or I wish there were more hours in the day. Now we have the time and it's not being appreciated as much as it was anticipated. The value of time means that lots of people wait around for the right time, but people don't realize there's no such thing as the right time. Time is never right or wrong, but only a negative factor of time is that you can lose it, and the only positive factor of time is that you can seize it. When you truly understand the value of time, the resource and the wealth, in fact, the wealth of time is the only wealth that is more valuable than human resources. So understanding the value of time is understanding the true essence of life. Life is about time. As time and effort can get you anything you want in the world, but nothing in the world can get you time. Today's scripture is from Hebrews 10, 24 through 25, and 2 Corinthians 8, 12 to 15. I read, and let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. For if the willingness is there, the gift is acceptable according to what one has, not according to what one does not have. Our desire is not that others might be relieved while you are hard pressed, but that there might be equality. At the present time, your plenty will supply what they need, so that in turn their plenty will supply what you need. The goal is equality, as it is written, the one who gathered much did not have much, and the one who gathered little did not have too little. I want to give a shout outs to the park unit for especially the work they did cleaning up the boardwalk on South Sound. Thank you for all the work that you do. Also wanted to give a shout out to the cultural foundations, the National Gallery, the museum, and the National Cultural Foundation for all the work you do in helping to preserve. Translations, as we ask people to stay home, and you've really been good in doing this, the majority of the population. I get emails daily and WhatsApps and messages all over the place about translations to do. Some of them make me scratch my head. But I was asked to give a shout out to the Swazi and Xhosa residents from Swaziland, now known as Eswatini, and their native tongue, Swati, the residents, and Xhosa, the original birth language of former President of South Africa, Nelson Mandela. In Swati is Siksela Ukalala Ikhaya. And then Xhosa is Insida Ulale Ekhala. And Somali is Foodland Guriga Goog. Thank you. So let's talk about boosting our immune systems during this coronavirus. We still need to exercise and get enough sleep to lower our risks of infection, but maintaining a healthy diet is to help boost your immune system may also give you that edge. It's important that I state that no research has been done on foods that help fight against COVID-19, specifically. However, previous studies have found that eating certain foods can improve your health and strengthen your body's ability to fight other invasive viruses. Here are some of the things that experts have said we can stock up on when next at the grocery store, along with how to add them to your diet. Red bell peppers reign supreme when it comes to fruits and vegetables high in vitamin C. 1 cup of red bell peppers contain about 211% of your daily value of vitamin C. Vitamin C contributes to the immune defense by supporting a variety of cell functions and can lower the risk of respiratory infections. It can also help with growth and repair of tissues in your body. It's essential because our bodies does not produce it naturally. Broccoli, it's also rich in vitamin C. Just half a cup contains 43% of your daily value of vitamin C. Broccoli is packed with antioxidants that supports the immune system. It also contains vitamin E, an antioxidant that can fight off bacteria and viruses. Chickpeas also contains a lot of protein, an essential nutrient made of amino acids that help grow and repair your body's tissues. Chickpeas are also packed with zinc, which helps the immune system control and regulate immune responses. Strawberries is also rich in vitamin C. Eating a half of cup of strawberries can get you 50% of the vitamin C you need for the day. Garlic. Not only is garlic full of flavor, but it's packed with health benefits such as lowering blood pressure and reducing risks of heart disease. Garlic's immune-boosting ability comes from its heavy concentration of sulfur-containing compounds, which helps fight off some infections. Garlic in the past has been shown to fight off common cold. Persons who took garlic supplements were less likely to catch a cold, and those who did get infected recovered faster. Spinach is rich in vitamin C and full of antioxidants that help shield our immune cells from environmental damage. Plus, it has a beta-carotene, which is the main dietary source of vitamin A, an essential component of proper immune function. Yogurt is a great source of probiotics, which are good bacteria that can help promote a healthy gut and immune system. Studies are also found probiotics to be effective for fighting the common cold and influenza like respiratory infections. Sunflower seeds are high in vitamin E, which works as an antioxidant and helps boost the immune system. Small but mighty, just 1 ounce of dry roasted sunflower seeds can give you 49% of your daily value of vitamin E. I hope that this has been helpful. Also wanted to note, when we talk about immune system, the international superstar singer Pink just recently got diagnosed with the coronavirus. Her and her son and her husband or daughter are living in the same house. But the son and daughter didn't get sick because they had a better immune system. In her words, I've never prayed more in my life. Also wanted to note that Meals on Wheels wants you to contact them if you know a senior in need of a meal or assistance. Call 769-1974 or 546-8886. That's Meals on Wheels. Also want you to, the Cayman Islands Baptist Church. If you need assistance, such as food purchasing or supplies, give them a call at 922-6839. Also, been getting a lot of calls from persons around the country about banks reaching out again, especially for the eastern districts. We have to travel the farthest. So actually three districts affected, East End, North Side, and Bodden Town. We appreciate your challenges, but we pray you can work something out. I'm also encouraging persons to utilize the online banking facilities for non-cash teller transmissions. This can reduce your need to go physically. Banks should also push this using more online debit card services for business persons. Should also use the night bag service. Must also note that dealing with pandemics is a new reality, and using an electronic banking platform is encouraged and might be the new way. So you probably want to keep up with that. As Theodore Roosevelt said, nothing in this world is worth having or worth doing unless it means effort, pain, and difficulty. I've never in my life envied a human being who led an easy life, but I have envied many people who led difficult lives and led them well. If you love this government, you would call and email their suggestions without automatically complaining because you can. If you wasn't so jealous as a person that you were targeted, wanting their positions with envy because you haven't been brave enough to sacrifice what they did in getting elected, if you were proud of this country, you would have prayed for all of us that we rebound sooner rather than later, but you probably prayed to Babel. If you loved yourself, you wouldn't feel so hateful towards everyone that you feel that you can abuse with your true ugliness, as hate can only come from an ugly heart. If you loved your family, you wouldn't be so negative and having everyone feeling ashamed and forcing your family to feel guilt. You bore on them. So I say to you, who you are tomorrow begins with what you do today. You've heard the remarks from Dr. Lee. Our expanded testing efforts have started with frontline healthcare workers on Grand Cayman and also on Cayman Brac. The Health Services Authority will be testing hundreds of frontline workers this week, including those working at the district health centers. Faith Hospital is testing their frontline workers using a drive-through tent. Doctors Hospital is also setting up a tent to test their relevant frontline staff, and other private healthcare workers and Health City will be testing their frontline staff this week as well. The CMO and Public Health, along with guidance from the government, are setting up the schedule for the next set of essential frontline workers, which is expected to start later this week. These include frontline personnel from the nursing homes, HM Prison, RCIPS, Fire Service, Customs and Border Control, among others. The Cayman Islands Hospital has 2 tents already in place, which will be used to test those essential workers. As we have said many times, we can only test based on the number of swabs we have on hand. And thankfully, we have enough to test our healthcare workers. There are more swabs set to arrive on island this week. And once we have those, we'll be in a good place to continue the testing of our essential workers. Public Health. The Public Health will be working with CMO's office to contact and schedule these accordingly. One more important thing in mind is while we are testing our frontline staff, we still need to test those who are sick and showing symptoms of coronavirus. This is all in addition to continuing the extensive contact tracing that Public Health is carrying out on a daily basis. Shout out to the subway for providing lunch to all the HSA staff members during yesterday's 24-hour lockdown. Thank you for keeping our healthcare workers fed. The outpouring from the community continues to warm my heart. The dedication of our frontline workers is bar none. We have so much to be thankful for as we continue in this fight against COVID-19. I thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, Minister. I'll begin with a number of questions from the public. The first question goes to our Honourable Premier. It relates to pensions. When will details be given on exactly who will qualify and where they can submit their applications?
Well, I've just explained who will qualify. If you have an account, if you have a pension account that you're not currently drawing a pension from, in other words, if you're already receiving a pension, you don't qualify. But otherwise, if you have an account, you are entitled you will be entitled to withdraw up to $10,000, everybody, assuming you have that much in the account.
Right.
And then 25% of whatever else remains in the account.
I think people just wanted clarity on whether it was for persons who are unemployed or persons just generally speaking.
No, there is no restriction on it.
Yeah, okay.
We debated that up and down, but it became too complicated. And there are a lot of people now who desperately need access to money. Some of the money to help keep businesses operational, to help pay their own staff. We're trying to do everything we can to keep as many businesses as possible from absolute collapsing over the next little while. It's going to be months before we can open the airports again. So we are cognizant that even those people are starting to feel the pressure now, the pressure is going to get even greater as time drags on and they're not earning. And we wanted to try to keep the process as simple as possible so that you don't have to produce a dozen pieces of paper to say, well, yes, I'm employed. I'm still employed, yes, but I'm only getting 2 days a week or whatever the case is. And you get into these endless debates. We've all been there. So we're trying to remove the opportunity for bureaucratic slowdown in people getting access to this necessary money. We know that there's a huge downside to this because you can't spend it and still have it. But people have to get to retirement. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep you alive economically long enough for you to get to retirement. There's always an opportunity to rebuild and to save again. Some businesses are not going to be, it's not going to be possible to save them. We know that. Those particular that rely on the tourism industry, unless they've got a really good rainy day account, they're going to really struggle. So we've debated this up and down in every which way that we can think of. And as I say, this is not perfect by any means, and we do know, as I say, that there is a downside to it. But right now, before things get truly desperate for people, we want to put in place a system that allows them to have access to it. I mean, our sort of rough and ready estimates indicate that this could put as much as $500 million into the local economy over the next little while. And that's exactly what the local economy needs to keep people employed, keep people fed, keep businesses going.
Sure. And just to be clear, it's for private sector pension only.
Yes, this is private sector pensions only.
Because I'm getting the questions here.
No, let me repeat, civil servants are all receiving their full salary. All of them, including the statutory authorities, who recently got a 5% increase in salary. Unless you are unemployed, there is no reason why your challenges should be greater in financial terms now than they were before the virus. In fact, you got less opportunity to spend the money.
This is so. I have a question for Dr. Samuel Williams. Dr. Sam, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
We just want to get an update on the numbers of persons who are calling the flu line. Has that number increased? Is it still stable?
As far as I'm aware, the numbers are still stable. Actually, between 40 and 50 calls a day.
Okay, Dr. Samuel, thank you very much. The next series of questions are for you, His Excellency. Some persons would like to know if you have any numbers on the cost of the flight from the UK flight.
The cost of the ticket?
The cost overall to the government for that flight.
Not as of now. That's still being worked through.
Okay. The other question is, will the military officers who are coming in be quarantined?
Absolutely, yeah. They will have to undergo 14 days of quarantine, as the team that went to Turks and Caicos also had to do. And the BA crew, as last time, will also have to quarantine overnight because it has to stay overnight and then go on the Wednesday to Turks and Caicos and London, and they will have to quarantine overnight. We will take no risks whatsoever on those issues.
Okay. Also, do we know how many people are actually going to be coming home, returning from Canada, that will have to be tested and quarantined?
From Canada? You mean from the UK?
From Canada. I think there's a flight coming in from Canada. Is it tomorrow?
No, the Canada flight today was simply taking out Canadian nationals back to Canada. There was nobody coming in.
Okay, so we don't have a return flight?
No.
Okay. All righty. Those are my questions. Well, some of them. We're going to move now to Kayla from the Cayman Compass. Kayla, please go ahead.
Hi, I'll try to make my questions quick because I know there are others in the queue. I wanted to touch on an issue that is affecting many on island, both Caymanian and expat, and it's the issue of the remittance services like Western Union. People are getting desperate. Can you just be blunt? What is going on behind the scenes? Why has this been such a difficult service to get established when we know that companies like Western Union do use a certain number of online services? They could schedule people online. They could implement social distancing. why aren't these services in operation?
I've said over and over again, the concerns remain about congregation. We have had no, not that I'm aware of anyhow, no submission, which I certainly have been asked to look at any, which was reasonable. Have you seen the videos of what's happened in Jamaica? We have a big enough challenge now with the banks and the supermarkets. Those, in my view, still remain very high risk, the highest risk areas for the community transmission of the virus. I repeat, if we can be satisfied that there is a way to control that process that does not increase significantly the risk of community transmission of the virus, we will look at those operating. I know just from my memory, most of them are just too small to be able to have any sort of effective physical distancing protocols put in place. I think Western Union might possibly be one of those that for which that is possible. Some of them operate out of supermarkets. Again, I think that's probably a nightmare. But we're prepared to look at any reasonable proposal because I know I know lots and lots of Jamaicans, and many of them have my phone number. Believe you me, I'm getting the pressure too. So the concern is not about keeping them from operating. The concern is about the public health risk that is inherent in the way that they operate, or I should say the environs in which they operate.
Okay. And I'll just move on to the next issue. One of the populations that I know would now like to access those services to actually receive money onto island are a lot of the stranded Nicaraguans that are now here. What is the plan to support that population in the meantime, now that many of them have been left homeless, have given up their accommodations? How can we show them some came in kind to ensure that they're not on the streets?
Well, the same protocols that we've put in place with respect to the broader expat community apply with equal effect to the Nicaraguans. So if there are Nicaraguans who are now struggling as a result of those their borders being closed, then they should get on immediately to NAU and let us see what we can do to help them. We've said, and I repeat that commitment of the government, we don't want anyone to go homeless or hungry. And whatever government has to do to ensure that that doesn't happen, we will do. If there are emergency services are required, let us know, and we will react.
Would temporary housing be an option to be offered to the people affected?
Well, temporary. Yes, I mean, if push came to shove, I'm sure we'd be able to find. I'm going out on a limb here because I don't have the sort of day-to-day knowledge of how this thing works. But as I say, we don't want anyone to become homeless. But then again, we don't want to. If people have the means to continue to rent a place here, then we want them to do that as well. It's only those who are in truly extenuating circumstances that can't manage to look after themselves that we would want, government to have to take the responsibility for.
All right. My next question is for the governor. There was a release circulated just before this press conference about a release of prisoners and repatriating some of those prisoners to their home countries. I believe the number was 4 that have already been released. Are there plans to release any further prisoners, considering that North Ward is currently over capacity?
Well, that's certainly under review. We have, using a mixture of the prison director's existing powers and my powers under the Prerogative Mercy, released 14 locally who were near the end of their sentence or already out in the community getting ready for release. and the four that we mentioned in the press release, 4 foreign nationals who we were able to deport and send back to their countries on the flights that have been arranged in the last couple of days. So every care is being taken to manage the potential COVID-19 risk at the prison and trying to reduce the numbers in a way that safeguards the community. We have to have the safety of the community uppermost in our minds, and we've done that in a sensible way and been able to reduce the numbers. And we will continue to look at that and see what can be done. I do want to confirm again that as part of our ramping up of testing, we will be testing for COVID-19 prisoners and prison staff, and everybody coming in to the prison new has to quarantine for 14 days and be tested before they can be integrated. So again, I want to commend the prison director for an incredible effort to do absolutely everything within our powers to protect the safety of our prison officers, who I believe are heroes on the front line in this, and also the prisoners. Whilst I've got the microphone, can I just confirm a point of detail from earlier? So the Canada flight today did have 34 Caymanians and some permanent residents on that flight. They have all gone into self-quarantine for 14 days, as all other people who have returned to our islands have done.
If I can just follow up on Kayla's point about the Nicaraguans. The number is actually, it's not an NAU number. It's 244-8000 or COVID support at gov.ky. COVID support at gov.ky.
Okay, Kayla, I think your audio is I'm not hearing you. Okay, there you go. We got you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. If you can hear me, this will be my last question. We see that Jamaica and other jurisdictions have expressed interest in purchasing test kits from Cayman. Is that something that we are considering, or are we considering the possibility of maybe implementing a regional approach to sourcing these kits?
Well, we've gone through this before. We have a number of countries, as many as 6, I think, who have asked us for assistance, and we're working through that, trying to be as fair as possible, while not compromising our own local situation. So we have decided, on the basis of medical advice, to keep 100,000 of the kits ourselves, and we had previously agreed to let Bermuda have 35,000. The ones that were still in London, or are still in London, they've decided to opt for a smaller number, which is fine, because we've had inquiries from St. Lucia, from Roatan, from Belize, from Jamaica, and there's somewhere else as well. So Bahamas. So we are trying to exercise the judgment of Solomon here and be fair as possible to everyone.
Before we move on to April Cummings at the Radio Cayman, Premier McLaughlin, would it be considered that any of those countries who are asking to purchase test kits, that if any of their citizens from our country wanted to go home, that could be arranged when those test kits are given to them or sold to them?
You're trying to make me be undiplomatic.
All right, we're going to move on to April Cummings now. April, please go ahead.
Thank you, Donna. This, I suppose, is for His Excellency the Governor, but I did receive some communications over the weekend. And I don't know how many other people are in this situation, but there was a couple who had to leave suddenly to have a baby in Florida. They're on work permit in the Cayman Islands. The country that they're originally from, borders are closed. Can't get back to Cayman. They're paying bills here. They're paying bills in Florida. They're struggling. And I just wondered if there was any advice for them, or whether just kind of what they do in a situation like this.
Sorry, April, where are they now? In Florida?
They're actually in Florida, in Miami.
Yeah. I mean, I think we had the flights last week, and we certainly want to arrange more of those. If there is demand still for people here who want to leave, and then we can bring people like that back, we will absolutely do that. But so I think we just need to ask people to continue to ring in to the travel helpline so we can sort of build a picture up of demand. But obviously, I understand the situation for those individuals you mentioned, and I recognise it's not an easy one.
Thank you, sir.
Wendy from CNS, please go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't expect April to be so quick. Our first question is for the governor regarding the arrival of the military from the UK. Can you just explain to us why he felt the need to bring in or request military support, and then also what exactly they'll be doing once they finish their quarantine?
So this is part of the UK response to the overseas territories and the commitment that I think UK has been very clear on from the beginning in helping the overseas territories deal with the COVID-19 crisis. A team was sent to the Turks and Caicos. We're sending a team here. I think there's discussions of whether a team would go to one or two others. So as I said in my comments earlier, it's simply it's a small team which will come and help us with planning, with assessments, and it will help on, for example, we've got some logisticians in the team who can perhaps help us with sourcing some of the supplies of medical equipment. It will help on hurricane preparedness. It will also help on our regiment. We will be able to use the team that comes to do some mentoring of our defence regiment. So it's simply a precaution to help make sure we can deal with any eventuality that we might face. They have to work as quarantined for the first 2 weeks, so they'll be doing lots of virtual meetings, meeting stakeholders, gaining an understanding of the situation, and then after their 2 weeks, they'll be able to get out and about a bit more. But I think this is a welcome addition to our capacities and capabilities on the security side to deal with the situation.
Okay, thank you, Governor. Also, this one really is for the Premier. It goes with all of his comments that he's made in the past about the reasons why people can't have all the things that they want. What we're beginning to see is, because obviously these questions come in every single day about why I can't clean my pool, why I can't do this. But one of the things that I'm starting to see is the frustrations of why can this happen, but this can't happen? So can you just give the public a wider reassurance that when the team at curfew time are assessing exemptions, that they're doing it fairly, and how you can be sure that they are doing it fairly? Because some people are complaining that you can get a cup of coffee delivered, but you can't get a pesticide to come in and address cockroaches in your house. So if you could just give some reassurances that the system is fair, and the reasons perhaps why people might feel it's unjust at times.
The system is not intended to be fair. The system is intended to reduce as far as possible the risk of community transmission of the virus. And therefore, there will be decisions taken with, well, how come he can get it, but I can't get it? It's because that assessment has been done, and it has been determined that this particular service or this particular area of business or the industry presents an unacceptable level of risk. The more, simply put, the more people there are out there, the more opportunities there are for people to, let me be colloquial, rub up against one another, the greater the chances that the virus is going to be spread.
Thank you, Premier. If there are no more questions for the panel, we do actually have one question from April Cummings. April, go ahead.
Hi, this question I think is for Dr. Lee. A question came into us asking sort of what the status is overall of personal protective equipment with regard to private medical facilities. Are we comfortable that they have all of the tools they need, since not everyone is automatically going to go to HSA?
April, if you could repeat that question for Dr. Lee in just about 5 seconds for me, Just give him 5 seconds to get to the podium, and you can ask the question again. That'd be great. Okay, he's there. You can
Dr.
repeat the
Lee,
question now, April.
Sorry, Dr. Lee. I
So-
think this is for you. The question was really about the private medical facilities, whether we're comfortable that they have sufficient PPE in order to do their work as well, because as we know, not everyone will go to HSA who may have symptoms, et cetera.
Yeah, so we've realized for some weeks that we need a national register of certain things that we need, and PPE is pretty key, as well as the parts that are required to do the testing for COVID-19. So we've tried to keep a record of these through the NEOC. They have a national PPE register. In fact, the HSA has been coordinating a lot of the ordering because it's easier to order at a country level rather than at an individual institution level. So they've been doing a lot of sharing in that regard and trying to make sure they know the needs for the different services, including, police and other frontline services, as well as just for any of the individual hospitals or healthcare providers. I don't know the details of it because it's a big logistical issue, which this group of the NEOC have taken on the task for.
Thank you.
Okay. I do have one final question, and then we're going to wrap this up for today. The question is, I believe for His Excellency, it's asking, will the British military be bringing assistance or support or be support for the Marine unit that will hopefully allow the big fishing companies to go out and do some fishing?
That's certainly something that we will look at. They're coming out to do some sort of planning work about the sorts of assistance that could be useful, and if that's something we decide they should do, we can absolutely use them for that as well.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, folks, before we go, a reminder to go online to gov.ky/coronavirus and eservices.gov.ky for answers to your most pressing questions. Thank you, of course, to everyone who made today's press briefing possible. We invite you to join us back here again tomorrow.
Blue serenity in yonder deep, the fear of death, but you pray, O Lord, for your soul to keep. Dear boredom, nothing but a selfish film over our eyes. Some people just don't get it. COVID-19 is a murderer, and your defiance reflects upon your character. Yes, I get it. Cabin fever is a breeding ground for depression, but I have a confession. Yes, you guessed it. We are in this together, and although our stories are not the same, they are similar enough to understand the pain. Read a book. Engage your mind. Don't give negativity the time to fester. Don't let it rule you so that Cayman 2 can see this through. Those beloved smiles that we shared with friends doesn't have to end, but you are consumed by what you do not have. When the health of Cayman is in your hands, there are many without work. They can't go to Kirk's in a panic, worry about organic. Premier says to live frugally so that repercussions don't hit so brutally. Read a book, they say. However, it is true. To discover something your mind never knew, educational absorbency in this time of uncertainty. Together, Cayman, together. Together, let's stay home, not just you alone. This is not a punishment, but a journey to success, to restore our faith in the human touch and the beauty of shared air. Together, we are a nation. Together, we are stronger.
amazing explosion on this island that many people haven't seen before, and we'll have our own Genie Orchestra performing really wonderful masterworks, by Shostakovich, by Prokofiev,
The